Takerandigra. 그래서 저소 자기 농인 혈압 거르게 되면 혈압 때 가게 로바케 기체네. 되네. 실 혈압을 수름세. 되네 힘내세. 혈압 그런 환통세. 대숨세 혈압용 되기도 실 타르바타발라 되네 냐모바 본겐레 혈압 니버 구기요레 디텐레 히네 구기요레 히네 텐레 투르미 구바인타 라바숨 타바토비체도 라바숨 셰케나 온디도 투르미 땡은전 혈압.
So this evening Khenchen Appey Rinpoche will be giving a teaching concerning wisdom. Actually, what's called here the three paths actually concerns the idea of wisdom itself. So, in order to accomplish the path of liberation, in order to accomplish the path of Dharma, it's absolutely necessary to accomplish wisdom. That without wisdom, we cannot have any Dharma path or any result whatsoever. And the path of the Dharma is actually in order to overcome our defilements. And the method for overcoming the defilements is to accomplish wisdom. And also, in order to accomplish wisdom, wisdom needs a couple of helpers, a couple of friends. So the friends of wisdom here means moral conduct and also concentration meditation. That through relying upon moral conduct, moral discipline, and also through relying upon concentration meditation, that we're able to enter into the path of wisdom itself, and then through wisdom that we're able to accomplish the path of Dharma, or the result of liberation itself.
Jundele yichebi debak tori dubse tene herab tarba dubse tori ton tarba duyala deba don herab inse na ondu deba don herab tori dub herab tarba dub.
Also, if we look at the Dharma path, we can divide the path into first of all gaining a result of the higher realms, of higher levels of rebirth, and then from that we can gain a stage of liberation. So in order to gain the result of rebirth in the higher realms, it's absolutely necessary to contemplate and also to accomplish faith. So through upon the basis of faith itself, that we're able to gain results in a higher rebirth. And then also based on faith, that through wisdom, that we're able to gain liberation. So due to faith, we can gain higher rebirth in happier realms. Then through wisdom, we can gain liberation itself. So also, according to the Mahayana path, we can again divide the path in a different manner. We can divide it through the three practices, first of all of compassion, then the production of the enlightenment thought, and then wisdom. And that through these three, through compassion, the enlightenment thought, and wisdom, that we're able to gain a stage of liberation itself. So it's actually on these three aspects of the Dharma, of compassion, enlightenment thought, and wisdom, that Rinpoche will explain this evening. So, the Buddha himself had said in the past that if one wishes to accomplish the path of liberation, that one does not have to know many different teachings, one does not have to know many different dharmas, one does not have to study a great amount of the teachings. Actually, all one needs to do is to know one practice. All one needs to do is to understand one practice and to practice that completely, to train in that completely. And when it was asked what that one practice is, the Buddha said actually that it's compassion. That through compassion that we're able to accomplish the major cause for gaining liberation or for gaining Buddhahood. So the very cause, the very basis for liberation or for Buddhahood is compassion itself.
소소 중바 대보지 슝나 지보지 슝나 방송 조보지 슝나 쟁기요래 다대 기라 자충중리 된다 소수 마네 쳔비 동보 소수 마동 팔아서 봐세 되네 노미세 된 주보세 되네 자세 되네 미동 미만이 비상전 탐제 지보 슝나 대와 슝나 상견될 샴바세기요래.
So first of all, in order to meditate or to think about compassion itself, the cause of compassion also is loving kindness. So first of all, our real meditation of accomplishing the path should start with loving kindness. And loving kindness is the thought that we should be with happiness, that we should be at ease, with comfort, with bliss, that all forms of happiness, all forms of comfort should be possessed by ourselves. And when we think in this manner, actually it's a small thought. It's actually a narrow-minded thought because it's for the sake of ourself alone. So according to the Mahayana, what we do is to expand that thought of loving kindness, of the wish for all sentient beings to have happiness, to be at ease, to be in comfort. And when we expand this thought, actually, through meditation, that first of all, we think that our mother of this lifetime, that our very kind mother should also be with happiness, that she should be with ease, that she should have bliss in every form, in every way possible. And then also that we think that our father should have happiness, should have bliss and comfort. And then also we continue our meditation, our thought to include not only our father and mother, but then also all of our other relatives and friends. And then we again continue this thought of wishing all people to have happiness by including all the living beings of this world, not only human beings, but also non-human beings or lower animals or even higher sentient beings, so that our thought of loving kindness, or our thought of that all people should be with happiness, should encompass or include all living beings of this world completely. And when we have a thought like that, when we really think that all living beings, no matter who they be, should be with happiness and possessed with happiness, then at that time our mind itself is pervaded by the thought of loving kindness. And then we've accomplished the thought or the meditation of loving kindness. So after accomplishing loving kindness, then we think of the idea of compassion itself. And when we think about our own self, we think that we would like to be free from all suffering. And this thought that we ourselves would like to be free from suffering is a thought which is not created by the mind. It's not a production of the mind. We just naturally want to be free from suffering. So it's called a non-artificial thought of compassion for ourselves. And we do this in our own daily lives, that we always think without trying to produce this thought in a special manner, that just we would like to be free from all suffering. So what we do with that thought then is to expand it to include also our mother and our father and all other living beings in this world. And in the beginning, it's a thought which we produce, just that we wish that all living beings, all sentient beings of this world should be free from all suffering. And then we should try to make that thought arise just like we have the thought for our own freedom from suffering, that the thought of our own freedom from suffering is non-artificial. So also we try to then produce this thought, a non-artificial thought, one that's not made, one that just comes naturally, that all beings should be free from all forms of suffering. And when we produce that non-artificial thought of compassion, then that's the real accomplishment of compassion itself.
Rong le dewa tonde yapanongin sanjen yen dewa tonde der sanjen yen ji dungar yimbi jumsen teshe te yendu dungar lendeba yomare dungar pona sam deba yore jeta yurgi tune dewa don dungar yimba jumsen tsundu yore sam ge samno tong shuk tune dewa tonde yabado dungar ponde yabate jibai jinsung yinza yana sanjen yen le ngi go yore samninje Deva sanjang deva dewa sosu deva gugi ba sosu deva yimbi jum sanjang gugi ba togu sanjirwa andane sene ji sanje tangje deva tonde dunga deva togu sambara dunga megu sambara sosu tiba yin sosu yana bani mishame sosu yana sosu sonya deva togu dunga megu sambara 그러는 게 연도표 상황이에요. 네, 인도네. 뭔가를 강조해요. 지지선에 좀 되지. 님한테 선제 탐제 말에 제왕 해마랑에서 정림번에 시원인서 선제 탐제 말에 제왕 해마 마요 잘 몸보세 셰비가를 펜터 텐션인자 이 전에도 되는 이제 감고
So if we would think to ourselves or question ourselves why we need to produce loving kindness and compassion, what's the purpose of this, then actually we'll come up with two main reasons why it's necessary to produce the thoughts of loving kindness or meditations of loving kindness and compassion. The first reason is that if we think about ourselves alone, we think actually that in this life at all times we wish to be endowed with happiness, we wish to be happy, to be at ease, to be with happiness of mind and body at all times. And just as we ourselves all the time wish to be with happiness and also free from all forms of suffering, everyone else in this world also has the exact same thought. There's no one who is different in this world that does not wish to be possessed of happiness and also to be free from suffering. So just because we ourselves have that thought always to be with happiness and to be free from suffering, and also all other living beings in this world also have that same thought, to be free from all forms of suffering and to be with happiness, but this itself is a cause or a reason why it is necessary to produce a thought of loving kindness and also thoughts of compassion, or to meditate on loving kindness and compassion. That is then just for the very reason that not only ourselves but all living beings in this world wish to arrive at that goal or to gain that result of being with happiness and freedom from suffering. Secondly, the second purpose for producing loving kindness and compassion is the recognition that all living beings in this world have been our very kind mother, either in this lifetime or in the past or in many, many past lifetimes. That every living being in this world, whomever we look at, whoever we see, has been very kind to us, has been our mother, has given birth to us, has brought us up in this world again and again. And since all the living beings of this world have been very kind to us in a past lifetime, that we think actually that it's necessary to repay their kindness at this time. And the method for repaying their kindness in order to pay back all that they have done for us, the life and the happiness that they've given us in the past, is at this time then to produce these thoughts of loving kindness and compassion, or in other words, to wish all of them and to work for all of them that they may gain all forms of happiness and comfort, and also all freedom from any type of suffering or illness.
jungsen teso kam ninje korong yona yondo kam guyo.
So one may think, actually, is it possible to gain a mind or a thought of compassion or a mind of compassion? The answer is that it is possible to gain a mind of compassion, but the method for accomplishing this actually is, in the beginning, first of all, to create a thought, to think about compassion, the need for compassion, the reasons for having compassion, and then to produce the thought of compassion again and again, that you have to make that effort of thinking, I will relieve all the sufferings of sentient beings. And then you think of this idea of compassion so that you make that thought, you produce the thought. And by producing this thought and then meditating on it again and again, that your mind becomes habituated to the thought. And then as your mind becomes more and more habituated or accustomed to the thought of compassion, eventually the mind does not need to produce the thought anymore, that it arises by its own nature. It arises naturally in the mind, just as the Buddha naturally has the thought of compassion, or the activity of compassion within his own mind stream. So also we must, in the beginning, produce the thought again and again, meditate on compassion again and again, until finally compassion arises by its own nature without any effort on our part, so that the mind becomes non-artificial, or non-artificial. It's not a production, it's not a thought which is produced, but one which just arises by its own self, by its own nature.
Drup goba yindu sanchen yanda lo tongge yore. Dema ze rondan drupi chedu sanchen le neba on mombo she yore. Ta tege tenga pardo sosu tenda sheko sambare de sosu tenda yon majung, miki tenda yon majung, ron leo dungar chenpo chu, sanchen yen leo nasi mombo shungore. Tenga pardo sanchen rondan sheko sambare wa. Tate ronda seglo san sanche yando yu yobarwa terma de ronda dui tandol sanche nese mo beserwa yin te neba yege te ronda dui yomare yanda dui yomare ronle dungar mo dui yomare yin le neba mo beserwa.
So after producing a mind of compassion, it's necessary to produce a mind, or the thought of the enlightenment thought, or the mind of helping all sentient beings. So in order to do this, that first of all, actually, at this time, all of us only think about ourselves alone. We only have a thought of wishing for our own happiness or being free from sufferings for ourselves. And we never even think about other living beings in this world, and even our close associates. But instead, actually, we're only thinking about ourselves, our own benefits, our own desires. And due to this, actually, we're always disregarding or pushing away other living beings or other people. And the problem with this, actually, is that every time that we do wish for our own benefit alone, it ends up that we're not able to accomplish our own benefit. And not being able to accomplish our own benefit, we're only bringing faults to ourselves or harm to ourselves. And when we harm ourselves, also simultaneously with that, we begin to harm other people also, or other living beings in this world. So though we have the thought in the beginning to benefit ourselves, we don't have the method, and what we do then instead is not only to harm ourselves also, but to harm other living beings. So without ever accomplishing our own benefit, and also with creating great faults, great harms to ourselves at this time and also in the future, we never accomplish what we set out to accomplish. And not setting out what we wish to accomplish, that we only are engaged in or only experience suffering and discomfort again and again. So what we should think actually this time, just to help ourselves and also in order to really accomplish the path of the Dharma, is to think that we shouldn't work for the sake of ourselves alone, but instead that we should work for the sake of all living beings, that actually we should accomplish the benefit and the happiness of all living beings, that we should bring all living beings to a state of liberation or freedom. However, we realize that we are not able to accomplish such an activity this time, that only a fully enlightened Buddha has the capabilities of bringing all sentient beings to levels of happiness and also to levels of liberation. So understanding that we don't have that potential this time, or we don't have the ability to do that at this time, still, in any case, we produce the thought at this time that we will accomplish that stage of Buddhahood, that we will work and we will perform whatever deeds or meditations or activities that are necessary in order to become a fully enlightened Buddha. And that by becoming a fully enlightened Buddha, then really we will be able to help all other living beings in this world, every sentient being, every living being, without an exception. So in this way, actually, thinking just about wishing to gain Buddhahood and wishing to gain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings or all living beings is the manner of producing what is known as the enlightenment thought, or it's the definition or defining character of the enlightenment thought, which means then that within this Mahayana path that we create this enlightenment thought or this thought to gain Buddhahood for the sake of all living beings. So this thought of enlightenment is very difficult to accomplish. However, if we're just able to really think of the enlightenment thought at this time, to really produce it in our mind, then this human body that we have now, we can understand that it will not be wasted. Actually, instead of wasting or uselessly using this very difficult to accomplish human body, that just by thinking of the enlightenment thought, just by producing this thought of enlightenment, this wish to bring all sentient beings to a stage of happiness and liberation, that we make this human body, which we've obtained with such great difficulty, a purposeful and a meaningful obtainment.
Deva don dungarni, Deva Tobia don dungar par mebate, de dugun all londor sigure. Deva coron su dungar coron meba sega somchi. Yena yon chu tune samna, to sebatona, no de londor se mutuk kendire. Deva top good dungar meguna, di jule londor seguvere, ju geva su diba papon. Jaza tene dungar ju kare sana leg ju nyamon bare nyamon bi tsawa dancing tu yawa yinza tene dancing te ponken te damit tu kherab member yonare dancing do damit tu kherab nin zendong garwa yimba kon ki la damit tu kherab te nelu don tembi lo yindu tene damit tu kherab te dancing de pon tu yore Gaza Hirab Damitu Hirabin, Tani Hirab Sumbat, Hirab the native Jumse Karisana. Do not the Duke Lele Shonwa, let in Yamu Bakshor, in Yamu the dancing show. The dancing Yambo the Damitu Hirabin. Dancing Yambo. The Damitu Hirabin. It is. Metamic. Condition dancing, Dame to hear of dancing point to Jimson Carisana. Then Dame to hear of dancing in Zenton Garwa. You know the Dame to hear of the Nel to Glory, Matu or dancing the Troy. There's a point to be honest.
So the third aspect actually of the path is to accomplish wisdom. So using compassion and the enlightenment thought, we actually wish to come to this third step actually of wisdom itself. This is really the ultimate practice of the path. And wisdom here actually means or is defined as the realization of selflessness. Right? That's the definition of wisdom itself. That's what we want to attain, is the realization or the experience of selflessness. And the purpose for wishing to gain this realization of selflessness is actually in order to gain liberation. What we want in this world, really, if we really examine ourselves, that we're always wishing to gain happiness, we're always wishing to be free from suffering. We wish to bring all types of happiness to ourselves. We wish to avert or to repel all types of suffering. However, we never look at the cause or the basis for all the happiness and the suffering in this world. So what we should look at actually is the very basis for happiness arising, for suffering arising in this world. And we understand actually that the very basis, the cause of happiness and suffering in this world is karma, is the deeds we performed in the past time, or the deeds we perform even at this time. So through all the karma, all the deeds that we're doing, that we're creating either happiness or suffering for ourselves now. And if we really examine karma, if we examine the cause of karma, we see actually that karma, or the deeds that we're performing in this world, arise due to our own defilements, meaning like desire, hatred, ignorance, miserliness, jealousy, pride, and all these other defilements. It's due to defilements, these various defilements, that we start to perform different activities. And then when we perform different activities, we have happiness and suffering. And then when we examine the defilements, we see actually that the cause of the defilements is a grasping or clinging to the self. So once we have a grasping of the self, or clinging to this idea of a self, then we produce defilements. When we produce defilements, we produce deeds. And when we produce deeds, or karma, then we have happiness and sadness, suffering and bliss, or whatever. So we have to see then that the very root cause of everything we have in this world, of all the happiness, all the suffering, the most basic root of all this is a clinging to the self, or grasping of the self. And the way to overcome grasping of the self is to have the realization of selflessness. So that's why the entire path of Buddhism leads up to this idea of wisdom, which itself is just defined then as selflessness, or the realization experience of selflessness. So we see actually that the grasping of the self, clinging to a self, is the object which has to be abandoned. Actually, we believe there's a self, and when we believe there's a self, there's a grasping onto that self. So the grasping of the self is the object of our mind. We hold it as an objective reality. So that objective reality of grasping or clinging to the self is overcome, is obstructed, or is contradicted, in other words, by the realization of selflessness. So the realization of selflessness is the antidote for overcoming grasping of the self. And this is what we must get at. This is the basis of the entire path of liberation, is just this realization itself, the realization of selflessness, or realization of non-clinging to self. Also, actually, there's many ways to explain wisdom, or even many different levels of wisdom. This evening, Rinpoche will explain two forms of wisdom. One is known as the ultimate reality, or the ultimate nature of all phenomena. The second actually is also the wisdom of ultimate reality, in other words. Second actually is a wisdom of what should be accepted in this world and what should be rejected, what you should do, what are the good things to do in the world, what are the things to be abandoned or to be relinquished in this world. And both of these actually are known as different forms of wisdom.
Tandam sana machu lo yur te Khenchen ki kherap nisi te khib kherap kenzob khib kherap tandam khib kherap kenzob sana chunong yur chu yur tandam sana lo machu yur te khib kherap ni kenzob khib kherap tandam khib kherap kenzob do tani sa tandam sana yur wa yur te Khenchen
So, if actually what Rinpoche was just explaining is that when we look at the nature of wisdom, we can say actually there's two natures of wisdom. One is this wisdom which understands what should be accepted and what should be rejected, and then also the nature of ultimate reality. So this is actually the nature of wisdom itself. When we look at wisdom from a point of view of classifying it or diversifying what is wisdom, we see actually, again, that there's two aspects of wisdom, or two classifications of wisdom. One is known as the knowledge or the wisdom which sees relative reality, relative truth, and one is the wisdom which sees the ultimate truth. So the wisdom which sees the ultimate truth means actually the mind which perceives the relative sphere or the apparent reality about us and understands its deluded nature, or actually the appearances of this world are known actually as a reflection of the deluded mind. So the one who knows that actually is said to be one who knows relative truth, one who understands the relative truth. So understands that the mind has an object, and the object here is the relative truth, and this relative truth actually is a delusion of the mind itself. I hope you follow that. The second one actually is the wisdom of ultimate reality, the wisdom of the ultimate truth. And here it means actually who understands the wisdom of ultimate reality sees that there is no object for the mind to grasp. Okay? So the relative truth means actually that there is an object for the mind, and then someone understands what those objects are. So understanding the objects of this relative world means actually understanding the relative truth itself, or the wisdom of the relative truth. And the one who understands ultimate truth actually understands or realizes that there is no object for the mind, that the mind actually has, it's devoid of any object, that actually the mind transcends all objective reality or all relative reality. And by this transcendence of the relative truth that we arrive at the state of ultimate reality or ultimate truth. So again, there's another way we can divide wisdom. Rinpoche is just giving you a lot of options in case you don't get one, you get another. This actually is a way of dividing wisdom through the path of the teaching itself, which is known as the wisdom of hearing the teaching, or the wisdom of study, then also the wisdom of contemplation, and third is the wisdom of meditation. So that through these three aspects that one can arrive at three different levels of wisdom.
소수 도세세네 디히궁이요레 텔레 삼중 히랍스 도세세네 히바들 감비 히랍스나 시당 레강이 차칭 레가 감로 마르테 감사나 용 감찰렘비탄 로리 단다 지버레 제서 냠뇽 사세 레가 마시 냠뇽 사고도 나동 만다와 갈레 요차지 디히궁이요레 텔레 감중 히랍스기요레 네 그래서 니뎀 레카스 जितने चीपल कम डोर वाला का मुझे से रहा यमन्यों थोड़ा यों लगा थी कोरते सार्वजनिक ही गुंडी रहा तो गमजों खिरप तो डाबर चीपर रे कम सों चंदोले.
So these three types of wisdom, the wisdom of learning, wisdom of contemplation, the wisdom of meditation, we can also see this from the worldly point of view and then also from the Dharma point of view. So for example, from the worldly point of view, just if we're studying, we go to someone, a teacher, listen to some ordinary worldly subject to learn a specific subject or a way to do something in this world, that in order to learn this first, actually we need a teacher. We need to go to someone who's able to explain to us what this subject is, what it is we wish to learn. So through relying upon a teacher, through relying upon text or books or whatever, that we're able to come to or a form of wisdom of the subject which we wish to understand. And then, in addition to that, having studied a certain subject, or just through experience having done certain activities, that we think about that activity or that subject again and again. And thinking about it, just contemplating about it, we come to understand its meaning or its purpose. And then in the worldly path, actually, there's not a real what is known as meditation, but still, what we're doing here actually is that just by doing an activity again and again, here actually the word meditation takes on the idea of becoming habituated. That when you become habituated to doing something, then actually it's almost effortlessly you understand what it is that you're doing. You understand the subject or the activity that you're engaged in. So through the practice or through the training in habituation or being accustomed to doing something, that in other words we're learning or understanding that subject thoroughly through the experience itself or through the experience of habituation. So from the worldly point of view, this is what these three wisdoms can be applied to.
소소 섬노동네 희슈나 섬노동시네 희슈나 되네 감셰네 되네 용사르바치 희공기여레 텔레 감중 희랍스기 네말레 요츠 희기여레 지바레.
From the Dharma point of view, these three types of wisdoms are known as, first of all, that you go to a teacher to hear the Dharma, to hear some aspect of the Dharma, and when this is explained properly, some teaching of the Buddha's teaching or some part of the Buddha's teaching, that you gain an understanding, sort of like a basic understanding of what that subject of the Dharma is, so that you hear this subject first, and then you come to some form or some slight understanding of what the Dharma is through study or through hearing it from a teacher. Then having heard that teaching, that you really think about it, you examine it, you contemplate about it, and then just thinking about it again and again, it increases your understanding of what the subject really is, of what the Dharma really is. So it's a form of increasing of that previous type of wisdom. And then finally, by meditating upon it, by really sitting there and calming the mind and placing the mind one-pointedly just on that subject of the Dharma that you've been taught or that you've contemplated on, then actually the wisdom that you have from having heard the subject or thought about it, it increases very greatly, and actually it almost arises like a new wisdom. It's a great experience which arises through the meditation of understanding that subject of the Dharma itself.
Tene jaza tombo chude tuguyore. Mathuba lobanchi sane mathuba sosu levam teplune chul kuyatele gabayore. Teshi rung mares karisana sosu ke lobana mathuba sheba yina nonru chembo shegi yarela shinlavim yomare. Jaza tombo loban san tu ne tene ti kakon doubles.
So when it comes to the Dharma, it's very important that when you first enter into Dharma that you study the Dharma very properly. And the proper method for studying the Dharma is to go to someone who has understood the Dharma themselves and then teaches you. Some people may object and say it's fine that we could just pick up a book and read about the Dharma, pick up a sutra or whatever and read the Dharma and understand it. However, the problem is that because we do not have a proper understanding, a proper basis for understanding the Dharma to begin with, it's very easy to misunderstand what the teaching is about, or not to understand it at all, or just to misconceive the proper import of the teaching or the proper meaning behind the teaching. So since it's very easy to fall off the path or to misunderstand what the teaching is about, it's very necessary in the beginning to receive a teaching from someone who has accomplished the path himself, and that by receiving the teaching from someone who has accomplished the path, then one is sure to receive the teaching in a proper way, and then also one really, in another way actually, receives the blessing of the teacher, because the teacher is passing on to you what he himself has been able to understand through his own practice of the path. So there's a great blessing, and there's an assuredness that the path is correct, that when you receive it from a proper teacher. Having received the teaching in that way, having heard the teaching from a proper teacher, then it's fine to start studying to supplement your understanding of what has been taught through reading the scriptures or reading books, and to reinforce the teaching as you've heard it, so that you're able to increase your wisdom of the teaching.
Sonjek Cholule, Lobjon Se Mugune, Gamshen, from the Tanking, Mini member Yamare, Zob Sonjado, Ron Sonjani, Chombare, Teme, Konga, Tombo, Toba Shene, Tene, Lalan Seguiori.
There, within the various categories of those who follow the Buddha's teaching, there are only two categories or two types of people who do not need to study the Dharma. Other than these two, everyone needs to study the Dharma, understand it, and follow the path properly. The two who do not need to study the Dharma is a fully enlightened Buddha and a what is known as a pratyeka Buddha, or a solitary or self-realized Buddha. These two actually have already in a previous time accomplished the path, so at this time they do not need to study the Dharma. Besides these two, besides the pratyeka Buddha or a fully enlightened Buddha, everyone else within the Dharma needs to study.
Kilo Jashu Saji Jontuna, Hira Yavayore, remember Chunchun Jombe, Pento Kiragun Mare, Yinayon, that something Lojon Se Matunayon, Sheton Chug Neda, Chu Shebi Tumde Kayore, Sig, Tenetegi Nipa Carpongiore. There's a Hebase title, Sosu Nyamsun Lenjo, Karinate, then Lojon Yavasigu Yore. Majuna Sosu Nyamsun, they had the Tension
So, if it's possible to study the Dharma in a very vast way, that this is the best if you're able to do that. There's no end to the study of Dharma, and it's a very vast subject. So whatever you are able to study as much and as extensively as you can, then that's very good, and that's actually the best path itself. If one is not able to study the Dharma, still it's absolutely necessary that whatever practice that you do within the Dharma, whatever your own individual practice is, that specific practice you have studied in a proper way before you engage in the practice. So that if you're just engaging in one form of like meditation or one form of one part of the path of liberation itself, whatever that is, whatever that practice, specific practice may be, that it's absolutely necessary that you have studied all the aspects of that particular practice, so that when you do practice it, you practice properly and you accomplish that practice, that training in a proper way.
The Sonja Tembas and Hitler, long temba on Toby Tembas, long tembasana, Sonja Sum, Hibat. Toby Tembasana, Sonja Sum be chewing Yamsul and Battery. Take on a long temba the jury in Hendononge. Toby Tembat and Rabri Jesu Candy. Jazza Lobjon Sea, Tenangot Chambori, Lobjon Sea, the Yomni Sika.
So when we think about the Dharma or examine the Dharma, we see actually that the teaching of the Buddha is divided into two parts. That which is known as the teaching of the Buddha, or that which was actually taught by the Buddha himself, the words of the Buddha, and not just the word of the Buddha, but also understanding the meaning of those words of the Buddha. So the first aspect of the Dharma is known as the words of the Buddha. The second aspect is the realization of those words or that teaching. So actually the Dharma is divided into these two aspects: the teaching of the Buddha, or the scriptures, what was taught, and then also the realization. So this first part actually, the words of the Buddha, includes then understanding what those words mean, not just reading the words, but really understanding, having a basic understanding of what was taught by the Buddha. And once we understand, we have a basic understanding of the words of the Buddha, then we start to practice them, or we engage in the practices in order to realize their true meaning. So the first one, actually, the words of the Buddha act as a cause, and due to this cause, what the teaching of the Buddha was, it results in the realization of the experience of those words. So for someone who's entering into the Dharma path, who's going to study the Dharma path, it's very necessary to understand that the Dharma basically is divided into these two levels. One is a cause and one is a result. The cause being the understanding, the study of the words of the Buddha, and then putting those words into practice, and through that practice, gaining realization.
Tobi tabse goyare tabji di tobi tabse bala tab de he goyare reb tobate tab lalen se goyare reb kaina chusik the lalen te he goyare.
No matter what we do in this world, whether a worldly activity or a Dharma activity, whenever we wish to accomplish any activity or any work, whatever it is, either worldly or dharmic, that it's necessary to understand the method for accomplishing that activity. And once we understand the method for accomplishing the activity, then we can put it into practice and then accomplish it. So the first basic aspect of whatever we want to do in this world, whether just a simple worldly activity, a business deal or whatever, or a Dharma activity, a Dharma practice, is that we must understand the method for accomplishing that. In order to understand the method,
remember ji manorwa yinayo penna nebak de laka nuba chin she mutu banong yin hera maybe jumsen ke laka de top don dem nuba don dem she mutu de she tu mare yabo nuseng mare mir hina tab non dogre tam manor na khu yanke she tu.
So the purpose of wisdom then, that we need to have wisdom, is that whatever we do in this world, we must understand the various aspects of the activities we are engaging in. For example, whether it's a worldly activity or a dharmic activity, first of all, we must understand our objective, where we're aiming for, the goal which we're seeking to gain. Having first recognized our objective or our goal, then we must understand the method for accomplishing that goal or that objective. Also, having understood what the method is for accomplishing it, then we must also make sure that we know the various ways to overcome any obstacles or any contradictions to that method or anything that will create an obstacle to accomplishing the goal itself. So the purpose of wisdom then, whatever it is, whether worldly wisdom or Dharma wisdom, is actually first of all to make us understand and realize, or just to have a basic understanding of the goal which we seek to gain, the objective which we seek to set out for, then to have the proper methods to accomplish that goal, and then also to know the methods properly so that we do not fall off the path or make a mistake, so that without great difficulty, with a very easy path or a very easy method or an easy way, with ease, with comfort, that we're able to accomplish the objective which we set out to do. So for this actually, in order to accomplish this, we must have wisdom. And without wisdom, we will never know our objective properly, and not only will we not know our objective, but also we will not know the method to accomplish that. And not only not knowing the method to accomplish it, we will not know the path itself, and then create just much unhappiness or many obstacles for ourselves, whether in this world or on the Dharma path.
Like I said to him, Nyuntalipena, Juban of Chido, Yona Lavan of Chigitans and a long up son member, Donna Yangel Tan member, she me hiking chogging you. No one on game.
So if someone tries to accomplish any activity, whether in this world or especially the Dharma path, without wisdom, then only great obstacles and great faults will arise. And someone who tries to practice the Dharma or to accomplish any activity without wisdom is like a blind person. That a blind person who wishes to accomplish any activity or the Dharma path must rely upon someone else. Either he must hold someone by the hand or use a stick or be led by someone in order to arrive at the goal, but he's not able to gain that goal, that result by himself. There's no way. He doesn't have the capabilities or the capacities to accomplish that. He does not have the ability. However, the person with wisdom is not like the blind man. He has all the capabilities and the abilities to accomplish the goal that he sets out for.
Tene herab tele tata heati dushuki yente non togi yore. Tere maze herab yana mi yen leon pento chimbusi gore pena gegen siyandu do chug tuni senayon chug sungen ki tembate herab chimbu ye ba chigi se togi yore. Pena tene drawo sosu dra herab chenji yana de ronle pen tuba sigi yore. Sosu drobo hera menken ninje lasam yanken jiyana de usu japshene soso lobtan chedudu de soso jan chenbo shebi kapsire pena soso ge nyedun dawo tende hera menken nada mihig tege chu shena rigmares jiten shaw sheguru sangene usu shegudu de kol lasam yore gabo yore de hera mebi chenje tantuna jan chenbo she yore. Herab cheng dado, herab maybe in herab cheng dayo always. Herab maintain yanking dawo chino, herab maintain drobo chin, drobo pamanda. Herab yanking drate social can do this.
Herab yanking down.
Drate already. Social Nala Gradiana, herab yanking Gradiana, being on the paint to cigarettes. Herab maintain drobo to not let him see to this. Herab yanking drobo. Nala ne chimbu chigre. Poso. Kera menken de drobo te nala ne chigre. Ken chimbu chigre nala.
Kera menken de
drobo. Kera menken de drobo. Amanda yana te nala ne chigre. Tele kera yanken de traffic gagre. Gawo te yagre. Koma zona. Gawo de kera yana so the point of this.
Kera yana.
Kera gawo de nala yana. Kera menken drobo jingale yana dingale chen chimbo chigre.
So mission yana. Mission the cousin
Ni drobo le kera menken drobo to kera yanken drani nale kera yanken drati yagre. Nale chen chigre. Kera menken drobo nale chen chimbo chigre.
So wisdom actually is very, very important. That one can even see that in this world, if you have a friend who is without wisdom, who is devoid of wisdom, then that friend actually can create great harm for you, because being devoid of wisdom, that due to attachments and due to misunderstanding the path, due to many other misconceptions or misunderstandings, that friend that you have in this world who is devoid of wisdom will only bring great sufferings to you and great harm through many different ways. However, if you have an enemy in this world, an enemy who has great wisdom, who has the proper wisdom, then that enemy, though outwardly would seem that he would cause great harm to you, because that enemy has great wisdom or possesses wisdom, would actually be able to bring greater benefit and happiness to you through his accomplishment of the path or accomplishment of wisdom itself. So, instead of looking from a worldly point of view of who's an enemy or a friend, we should look at those about us who has wisdom or who is ignorant. And even if someone in this world might be an enemy but possessed of wisdom, then actually he's a greater friend or a greater benefit to us than an actual friend or relative who is devoid of wisdom, because they will bring us great harm and suffering.
Te ko tsiba sa shene semchen de meba che gut sam pa ngo semchen de le toa chenbo chudu pa de saison te me kubat robo kubat.
For example, someone who's really devoid of wisdom can bring great harm For example, it was said that one time this young son was a very ignorant man, and one time when he was with his father, he saw an insect fall onto his head and onto the head of the father, and creating great hatred for that insect, and wishing to rid his father of a pest like that, he grabbed the hammer and he smashed the insect, but also he smashed his father's head and killed him. So actually meaning out of ignorance, we cannot bring benefit, but we only bring harm to even those we love.
Then Herabjing Mitek call it low shoot up shane. Then a Yandatuma Halegwe, Tapi over the sea to you. Then a Sanga Dojuna, then a call Longchen Segu son of Korea. Sanga Hajun Dojuna, Longchen Segu, low sea to the low shoot up. Google something, lot of things. That's a Gangarshuna power to Herabchin, Taki Kura, Yanda Halaya to the city. We said the Yagares Gangarshuna, because some of the Yaudo Herabchin, Gangar set up.
They sang this
Singer Kira to do Hakan Toboshuna, the Kulom to say some people.
Because the sheriff Yankin.
So someone who has wisdom is able to accomplish many different activities in this world, and even an activity which is possessed of great difficulty or is really very difficult, someone who has wisdom is able to really examine the situation very properly, is able to come up with a very correct or fitting method to overcome the problem. And then with that fitting method, the proper thoughts, that without really a great difficulty, one is able to overcome the problems and then to come to a result. For example, even a lion who has great hunger, he'll think of a very easy method. Actually, he'll create a great, the proper method or the proper, I don't know what is it. What do you call it? Not enthusiasm, just a strong thought, a very strong idea, even to kill an elephant when he's really hungry. So with that kind of force of mind, with that kind of force of idea, that type of enthusiasm, that he's able to overcome even a huge animal like an elephant. So in the same way, someone who has wisdom can produce such a forceful thought. In the same way, one can produce such a forceful idea to overcome great difficulties in order to accomplish whatever goals one has set out to do. So wisdom actually is the key to this.
Tromso shubo chi yore. Te lumba te jarbo te ke tromso shubo te ke longse te len go sam. Te ko ne to sale. Tromso te temba chi yore, chu temba. Chu yesa go. Te jabu sena ti temba te ya tong go ndos ko sal. Temba te matong na cheba chembo che gi yin sala bare. Temba san chu mi well. Somebody at home will do Jabo Costa, Matona Chebache in Slav. Then didn't meet a centration, Taco Jabo Lonset Tomja Mevas Reza. The Pomo take tone, a Garcian Santa Shaggy said, the Jabo Tenda Lamdus, the Pomo Santa Mazi Tapshes yours. Then a Pomo Lava Yar Jabo. The Jabo Cheronge Temba Sugal Temba Chiton Gundus Tembaling Hank. Then it Temba to Tong in Salava. What's on? Temba Tong goes everywhere. Temba Tong goes to the Temba Sunken tea tong shoes, Temba tea. Como de Jabo Lavare. The Patek Hakomas on Classic, the Santa said, Como Riva change your the Jabo Liga Tombari. Temba tea Sunken Then Temba going to.
Through wisdom, that even great difficulties or great harms that we think we're going to encounter can be overcome with a bit of cleverness or a bit of wisdom.
Chino Teton Gundos, Emak, Tawachi, Pitcon Yankinchi, Tawas and Kare, Shemak Zup. Then young Koyalabs, Beji Territory, the thing as Pugungins.
Or again, in another scripture, it was said that in a similar situation, a king was again desirous of someone's property, and in order to get the property, he said, actually, please, you should send to me one rope made out of sand. And of course, the person couldn't make a rope out of sand; it wouldn't stay together. So he wrote back to the king first. He said, please send a sample of what it should look like, and then I will send you one. So, since the king couldn't do it, also he gave up at that point.
Then it's a Tensong Pen Sidank, Jacob is Sishutim, Pachere Tumtan of Chogum get it. Tate Tombo, Sidan, the Mepshankente, Herab Chejung Chembe, Tenity Sidan, the Leni Mumbogungere, Sidan, Tumtan of the Yaboshuna, Tenulumba Kunga, Debogungenji. Sidan non true Shimbaina, Herab Mepchembe. Herab Charwa Segure, De Shabaina, the Lumba Conga Dungar Kendo, the Herab Chejung Chapter Chambo, Nago Chambo. No see that pen is on here a motor, Setombo Chag is only Herab change is over, the Lumba Conga Devo Chato, Herab Mengenji Zona, Lumba Conga Dungar is over.
So also, whatever activity, even worldly activity, it's absolutely necessary to have wisdom in order to produce happiness in this world. For example, someone who is in charge of a country or a kingdom or whatever, if they plan out, if they set out to bring happiness to the country, if the person is not endowed with wisdom themselves, then all they bring to their people or to the people of the country is great suffering and great harm. But if one sets out to make proper goals and then also the methods for accomplishing those goals with proper wisdom, then only happiness and benefit will arise. So actually wisdom is the very basis of accomplishing of happiness.
Yina yung temba te Herab Chejung Jembe, te Cholu tele on Nazuji Gungi. Goju them not to Sana Mengen. Choosing in the Jan Sana Mengen. Yes, this one.
So also in the Dharma, when we wish to accomplish the Dharma path, it's absolutely necessary that first of all that we find a Dharma that is completely free from all thoughts, or a Dharma which has a proper goal, and also a goal which is free from all suffering or free from all thoughts or misconceptions, that it's a proper absolute or ultimate type of Dharma. And also having seen or encountered a Dharma, or a religion or a philosophy, which is completely free of all thoughts, or has the proper basis for accomplishment, that also we meet with a teacher who also is free from thoughts in order for us to understand what that teaching is, or what that goal is, what that religion is, and then also a teacher who is free from thoughts so that we do not have any misconceptions, or we do not fall off the path itself, and we're able to accomplish the path. The only difference is when we're working on the path, or when many other people are working on the path, is a question actually of greater or lesser wisdom. That between many people, some have greater wisdom, some have lesser wisdom. But anyone who has greater or lesser wisdom, who has already depended upon or relied upon a perfect teaching, and also a teacher who is devoid of thoughts, will then gain various stages on the path in accordance with the greater or lesser wisdom which they possess.
Tene Herab Jedao Kanda Chigurusana, Temon do Pena Techen Yinayon, Nisso Lojung Chi, Tosam Shene, Herab Cheguyori. Songak Lule, Tena Lab is Ladrumne, Herab Cheguyori, Tapi Herab Kanda Chitogurusana, Temon le, Passion Table, Nizugitem, Temon le, Temon Chigurua, Mene, Temon, Lojung Chigur. The song Lule and Fla.
So if we think, what is the method for gaining wisdom? For ordinary wisdom, just common worldly wisdom, it's necessary to engage in study or learning, and then also contemplation. That through learning a subject, studying a subject with the proper people, and then also examining it and then studying it very properly, then we're able to accomplish a worldly path or worldly wisdom. From the point of view of Dharma, and here specifically Rinpoche is talking about from the view of the Vajrayana teaching, the way to accomplish wisdom is to rely upon a wisdom deity or a manifestation of the wisdom aspect of the enlightened beings.
Pena Kanjuru Tomba Jala Yore, Tanjur Tomba Ni Jala Yore, Te Tsembi, Yum, Boom Jobjet Tamba, Tuli Yava in Setende Kabachamba Chover. Khenchen Yava, Sapen Gizu, Sanjam Baru Tomba Shungarua, Te Lol Senya Kanjuru, Tanjur Tomba Sundase, then a peg, Peja the Shepi, Pejam Boom Jobjet, Lol Sense. Kondo Pele, Gehi Karawaku Juteni. Losing Chekut. And the Kabachato. The love is like and love the Jonah Gungo Maris. So don't send it and they're going to go Maris.
So, for example, through relying upon a special meditation deity or wisdom deity, that one is able to accomplish great wisdom from the Dharma path. For example, in Tibet itself, one of the founders of the Sakya sect of Tibetan Buddhism, by the name of Sachen Konglen Nyingpo, himself meditated upon for a long time the Bodhisattva of wisdom, Manjushri, and through meditating upon Manjushri, that he had a vision one day of Manjushri himself, that Manjushri appeared to him in a vision and gave him many teachings, actually, especially a teaching known as parting from the four attachments. And due to that Sachen Konglen Nyingpo gained a very profound realization or understanding of the entire Dharma path. Also, at a later time, in about the 14th century, there was one Tibetan Lama by the name of Yakten, and Yakten actually meditated upon Sakya Pandita. Actually, Sakya Pandita was known to be an emanation or manifestation of Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, Manjushri himself. And Sakya Pandita actually was one of the founders of the Sakya sect. Later on, this Lama, Yakten, meditated upon Sakya Pandita, and he had a vision of Sakya Pandita one day, and Sakya Pandita gave him very great blessings. And actually one of the teachings that many of us follow here, which is known as the meditation of Sakya Pandita in the form of a Guru Yoga or in the form of Manjushri, was started by this Lama Yakten. And at the time when Yakten had this vision of Sakya Pandita and received the blessings of Sakya Pandita, after that, very quickly he memorized the entire Tibetan canon, which was actually 100 volumes of the Buddhist speech or Buddhist teaching, and then also the commentaries of the Buddhist teaching, which is another 200 volumes that he also memorized very quickly. And then in addition to that, there was other teachings in Tibet of later commentaries of the Tripitaka, which actually were very, very many in number, many thousands in number, and he was able to memorize those also. And in addition to memorizing them, actually he understood them, he understood the meaning and was able to put them into practice. So it was through the blessings of a wisdom deity, or relying upon the emanation of the Buddha's wisdom in the form of a deity, through deity meditation or Vajrayana style meditation, that he was able to accomplish such a profound level of realization, or a profound level of wisdom himself. So this type of wisdom can be accomplished just for the purpose of accomplishing the Dharma, and this type of wisdom actually cannot be accomplished just by study of worldly scriptures or worldly books, but only actually through relying upon the meditation of the meditation deities.
Tate chungpa mare te peje tsamjiri tene jagar ke tsambi lungpa mombo chile jambi yongi jesu zumbi keba mombo chung yore tene nge tso yon 주진 탐지 총세 개 매바이나 되네 된된 가르체 매바이나 되네 혈압 첨부 조주래와예.
So also, not just these two people, but many people actually in the past have relied upon meditation deities, or especially have relied upon Manjushri himself, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, both in India and Tibet. And through relying upon Manjushri, that they have had visions of Manjushri, and not only visions of Manjushri, but then through that have been able to gain a very deep or profound level of wisdom themselves. So also, if we with very proper faith and with proper diligence, with good conditions, also meditate upon wisdom deities such as Manjushri, it is sure or certain that also we'll be able to gain a profound level of wisdom ourselves. So actually this is what Rinpoche would like to offer you tonight as an idea of what wisdom is according to the Buddhist perspective.